Alien mother was raising her 3 children in a tent. A human said, "Tonight, you will sleep under a roof." Small creatures scuttled across the dunes, and the wind carried a dry, warm scent that filled the alien mother's nostrils. Lyra's 3 children clung to her, their small, delicate forms trembling against the biting evening breeze. She had seen too much of the desert's cruelty to let her guard down, yet she pressed onward, determined to keep them safe. Her children, Coro, Lena, and little Fex, were curious and bright, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, reflecting the last rays of the twin suns. They had not known a permanent home in their lives. Their mother had moved from one place to another since the loss of their father, who had disappeared years ago during a fierce sandstorm. Now, with 3 young children depending entirely on her, Lyra's every step was calculated, her mind a constant whirl of caution and planning. The tent they lived in was small, patched from various pieces of fabric scavenged from old ruins or carried from distant trading posts. It offered only the barest protection from the desert's harshness. Inside, the children huddled together, trying to keep warm as the nights grew colder than the sun suggested. Lyra had prepared a small meal from the dried rations she had managed to save, but the children had little appetite. Hunger was a constant companion, and tonight, the wind had carried the smell of sand-baked roots from far away, teasing them with food they could not reach. "Mother, why do the suns go down?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. She was the middle child, sensitive to the vast emptiness around them. "Does it mean danger is coming?" Lyra crouched beside her, brushing a strand of glowing hair from the child's face. "No, little one," she said softly. "The suns go down every day just as they rise again, but we must always be ready. The desert is not kind, and we must be stronger." Her voice was firm but gentle, a careful balance of comfort and authority. The youngest, Fex, barely a year old, rubbed his glowing eyes and whimpered. Coro, the oldest at 8 cycles, tried to comfort him with a tiny hand. Lyra watched them carefully, always aware of the dangers outside. Even at this hour, predators lurked in the shadows, and wandering travelers could be both a threat and a source of unexpected fortune. It was during one of these quiet moments, as the wind hummed around their fragile tent, that Lyra noticed something unusual. From atop a distant dune, a figure appeared. At first, it was a shadow, a dark silhouette against the fading light. Then, as it moved closer, she could see that it was a human, an uncommon sight on this remote world. Humans were known to travel these deserts, charting trade routes or seeking resources, but they were rare and unpredictable. Lyra's heart raced. She quickly ushered her children deeper into the tent. "Stay very still," she whispered. "Do not make a sound. Watch and wait." Her hand trembled slightly, betraying the fear she tried to hide. The human stopped a few dozen meters away, kneeling and studying the terrain. He seemed cautious, aware of something or someone watching him. Lyra studied him in return. His clothing was simple but durable, suited for long desert travel. He carried no visible weapon, only a small pack and a walking staff that gleamed faintly in the light. Something in his stance suggested he was not there to hunt or harm. Marcus, as his name would later be known, sensed movement in the sand. He squinted, his trained eyes catching the flicker of glowing light from the small creatures observing him. He smiled gently, kneeling down to seem smaller, less threatening. "Hello," he said, his voice calm and measured. A small device at his side translated his words into the alien language. Lyra stiffened. She did not speak to strangers, especially humans, and even less so to one who might mean them harm. Her children huddled closer, their tiny bodies almost vibrating with fear and curiosity. She debated her options. Could she risk revealing herself? Was this human truly harmless? The desert had taught her that appearances were not enough to judge by. Marcus did not move closer. He simply spoke again, softer this time. "I mean no harm. I am a traveler. I have food, water, and a place to sleep. You do not have to be alone tonight." The words resonated with something deep inside Lyra. She had not known kindness in a long time. Her life had been about survival, not trust. Yet there was something in the human's calm demeanor, in the way he held himself, that made her pause. The desert had taught her caution, but it had also taught her to recognize opportunity. Perhaps this stranger could help them. She studied her children, reading their expressions. Coro looked wide-eyed, torn between curiosity and fear. Lena's small hands gripped her mother's arm, and Fex whimpered softly, sensing his mother's tension. Lyra took a deep breath. Her pride and caution battled with the reality of her situation. She was tired, and her children were hungry and cold. Perhaps they could trust this human, at least enough to survive tonight. With a subtle nod, she signaled the children to follow her outside the tent. Their glowing forms moved cautiously through the soft sand. Marcus remained still, giving them space. He set down a small bundle, which Lyra recognized immediately as a carefully prepared meal and a set of lightweight blankets. He gestured toward a flat area nearby where a small, temporary shelter had been constructed. "Tonight," he said, his voice steady, "you will sleep under a roof." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had never slept under anything more permanent than her tent. The concept of a roof, of solid protection from the desert and the stars, was almost alien to her. She looked down at her children, whose faces shone with awe and hesitation. Slowly, carefully, she led them toward the shelter. Inside, it was warm. The walls glowed faintly, powered by small energy cells. The air smelled of something unfamiliar but comforting. Lyra allowed herself a rare moment to relax, feeling the tension in her muscles ease slightly. Her children explored cautiously, touching the walls, marveling at the stability and light. Marcus observed quietly, giving them space. He did not rush, understanding that trust was earned, not demanded. "Rest," he said softly. "You are safe here. No harm will come to you tonight." For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt hope. She watched her children settle down, their bodies curling together on the warm floor. She could see the exhaustion in their eyes and the relief that came with safety. The desert outside still raged, but inside this human-made shelter they were shielded. As the night deepened, Lyra sat alone for a moment, gazing at the faint light of the twin moons through a small viewport. Her mind replayed the day's events, the endless march across dunes, the near misses with predators, and the unexpected appearance of a human who had offered them kindness. She realized that survival alone was not enough. Perhaps there was a way to live, to thrive, to learn from those around her. Her thoughts drifted to the future. If this human was as he seemed, gentle, understanding, and capable, then perhaps he could teach her children something more than survival. Perhaps they could grow strong in ways the desert had never allowed. The idea was frightening, yet exciting. Outside, the wind howled, bending the dunes and shifting the sand. Inside, Lyra's children slept, their tiny chests rising and falling in a rhythm that was both familiar and strange in this new environment. Lyra wrapped a thin blanket around herself, feeling the warmth seep into her tired body. She allowed herself a single, quiet smile. Tonight, for the first time in many cycles, she felt safe. And as the twin moons climbed higher, casting silvery light over the desert, Lyra whispered softly to the night, "Perhaps not all strangers are dangerous. Perhaps there is more to this universe than fear." The night passed quietly, the desert's ferocity kept at bay by a roof, by the simple but profound act of human kindness. Lyra's mind could not stop turning over the possibilities that lay ahead, the promise of knowledge, safety, and companionship. The stars above twinkled, and for the first time in a long while, she imagined a future where her children could grow not just to survive, but to live. The next morning, Lyra woke to the soft hum of machinery and the faint scent of warmth. The human outpost was alive with quiet activity. Small figures moved about, tending to plants, adjusting panels, and speaking softly in the universal language. Outside, the desert stretched as far as her eyes could see, but here inside this shelter, there was order, comfort, and something that had been missing in her life for a long time: safety. Her children were already awake. Koro stood at the edge of the room, eyes wide, staring at the walls that seemed almost alive with energy. Lena traced her fingers along the smooth surface, fascinated by the faint glow. Little Fex crawled toward a soft patch of light on the floor, giggling at the way it reflected off his tiny hands. Lyra watched them with a mix of pride and caution. They were curious, eager to explore, but she knew the world outside these walls could be cruel. Marcus appeared carrying a small tray of food. His presence was calm, unthreatening. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you all slept well." He placed the tray carefully before them. Lyra nodded, silent, observing him as he stepped back. The children moved toward the food eagerly, their hunger overcoming their caution. Koro tasted a piece of soft, nutrient-rich paste, his eyes lighting up with surprise. "Mother, it is good!" he exclaimed. Lena and Fex followed, tasting with delight. Lyra allowed herself a small smile. She had been so focused on survival that she had forgotten the simple joy of a warm, satisfying meal. After breakfast, Marcus guided Lyra and the children outside the shelter to a small courtyard within the outpost. The area was enclosed by low walls and lined with strange devices that hummed softly. There were small gardens growing in neat rows, providing fresh food, and a few human children playing near a low pool of water. "These are some of our children," Marcus explained. "They like to play here safely. You can watch, but don't worry, nothing will hurt you." Lyra studied the human children. They were different from her own species, yes, but in their energy, laughter, and curiosity, she recognized something familiar. The bond between a parent and child was universal, she realized. Her children mirrored the humans' excitement, their eyes shining with wonder. The morning passed slowly with cautious observation. Lyra allowed her children to explore, keeping a close eye on them as they touched the plants, watched the humans, and learned how the devices worked. Marcus remained patient, answering questions and explaining the purpose of the tools in simple words. He showed them how the gardens worked, how water was collected and purified, and how energy was stored to keep the shelter warm. At first, Lyra felt overwhelmed. Everything was so new, so different from the constant struggle of the desert. But she began to notice the humans' care for one another, their patience, and their teamwork. She watched them work together without anger, without fear, and realized that this was a form of strength she had not considered. Survival alone was not enough. Strength came from knowledge, collaboration, and trust. During the afternoon, a small crisis occurred. Fex, curious and fearless, crawled toward a strange, glowing device near the wall. Lyra's heart jumped. She ran, grabbing him just in time before he could touch it. Marcus came over quickly, concern in his eyes, but not anger. "Careful," he said gently. "It is not dangerous if you do not touch it, but it can be harmful if handled incorrectly." Lyra nodded, feeling a mixture of embarrassment and relief. She looked down at Fex, who giggled innocently, unaware of the danger he had narrowly avoided. She realized that this place, this human outpost, was not just a shelter. It was a place to learn, to grow, and to gain knowledge that could help her children survive and thrive. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Lyra and Marcus walked together to a small terrace overlooking the desert. The twin suns were low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dunes. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the shelter fade as the cool desert night approached. "You trust me," Marcus said softly, breaking the silence. Lyra looked at him carefully. Trust was not something she gave easily. "I do not know you," she said. "I know only what I see, and what I see is different from what I expected." Marcus nodded. "I understand. All I ask is that you give it a chance. I can teach you things, ways to make life easier for you and your children. You do not have to survive alone anymore." Lyra considered his words. She had always survived alone, relying on her wits and the strength of her small family. But she realized that alone did not mean strong. Alone meant constantly on edge, constantly fearful. Perhaps there was more to life than mere survival. Perhaps learning, trust, and cooperation could give her children something more: hope. The evening came, and the shelter's lights glowed softly against the darkening sky. Lyra prepared her children for rest, guiding them to a warm corner of the structure. They lay close together, their small bodies radiating trust and exhaustion. For the first time in many cycles, Lyra allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She thought of the desert, of its beauty and its danger, of the endless struggle she had faced to keep her children alive. And she thought of this human, Marcus, whose kindness had changed the course of their lives. Night deepened, and the desert outside remained harsh, silent, and unyielding. But inside the human shelter, Lyra felt a sense of peace. She watched her children sleep, their faces calm, their bodies safe. She knew that tomorrow would bring more challenges, more learning, more adaptation. But she also knew that, for the first time, they had a chance to thrive. During the night, Lyra dreamed of the desert, but the dreams were different now. They were not only of survival and struggle. She dreamed of gardens, of knowledge, of safety, and of a future where her children could grow strong, not just in body, but in mind. She dreamed of the stars and of distant worlds she had never dared to imagine, and for the first time she felt that her family could reach them someday. Morning came with a gentle light, filtering through the shelter's walls. The children woke eagerly, ready to explore again. Lyra rose and looked around, feeling a sense of anticipation. She saw that the humans were preparing for the day, teaching, working, and living in harmony with the desert rather than fighting against it. She realized that this balance, this understanding, was something her family could learn, something that could make them stronger than they had ever been. Throughout the day, Marcus continued to guide them. He showed them how to use tools, how to gather resources efficiently, and how to maintain the shelter. The children absorbed every lesson with bright-eyed curiosity. Coro asked questions about energy and water systems. Lena marveled at the way the humans worked together. Fex laughed at the smallest things, his joy infectious. Lyra watched them and felt something she had not felt in a long time, hope, not just for survival but for growth, for learning, for life beyond the struggle. She realized that humans had something remarkable, the ability to protect, teach, and inspire. And perhaps, she thought quietly, her family could learn from them, combining their own resilience with the humans' knowledge. As the twin suns began to set again, casting long shadows across the outpost, Lyra felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had never imagined that one human, arriving in the desert with a simple offer of shelter, could change the course of her family's life. She knew the desert would always be there, unforgiving and wild. But now she had a place to rest, to learn, and to grow. And more importantly, she had someone she could trust. That night, as the children slept peacefully under the solid roof, Lyra allowed herself to close her eyes without fear. The desert's harsh winds howled outside, but inside, warmth and light protected them. She whispered softly to the night, "Perhaps life can be more than survival. Perhaps there is more to see, more to learn, and more to become." And in that quiet moment, under the twin moons and the shelter of a human roof, Lyra felt something she had not felt in years, the faint but powerful spark of hope. The days passed quickly in the human outpost. Lyra had begun to notice small but significant changes in her children. Cora was more confident, asking questions and exploring new areas with careful determination. Lena laughed more freely, her curiosity leading her to discover small marvels within the gardens and shelters. Little Fex had begun to interact with the human children, giggling and learning from their playful games. Lyra watched them with a mixture of pride and wonder, amazed at how quickly they were adapting. Marcus continued to guide the family patiently. Each morning, he would explain new tasks or show them ways to make life easier. He demonstrated how to purify water using simple filtration devices, how to maintain the shelter's energy systems, and how to care for the gardens. Lyra paid close attention, absorbing every detail. For the first time, she realized that survival was not only about finding food or avoiding danger. It was about understanding the world, learning its rules, and using knowledge wisely. The alien children were quick learners. Coro showed particular aptitude for the technical devices, mimicking Marcus's movements and asking questions about energy and mechanics. Lena gravitated toward the gardens, fascinated by how the plants grew under human care, thriving even in the harsh desert environment. Fex, though still very young, seemed to have an instinctive understanding of patterns, often helping Lena water plants or stacking small containers. Lyra found herself amazed by their intelligence and also grateful for the opportunity to nurture it in a safe place. One afternoon, Marcus invited Lyra to help with a small project outside the shelter. A section of the outpost's perimeter wall had been damaged in a minor sandstorm, and he wanted her help to repair it. Lyra hesitated at first, unsure of her strength compared to the humans, but Marcus encouraged her gently. "Your hands are capable," he said, "and your knowledge of the desert can help us protect this place." Lyra realized he was right. Her family's life in the desert had given her hands strength and precision. She could handle tools and materials with care and efficiency. Working side by side with Marcus, she learned how to reinforce the walls with lightweight panels, how to anchor them against the desert winds, and how to use small machines to make the work easier. The task took hours, but by the end, she felt a sense of accomplishment she had not felt in years. While they worked, Marcus spoke about humans' ways of solving problems. "We survive together," he said. "We share knowledge, we protect one another, and we teach the young. Life is easier when we work as a community." Lyra nodded, her mind turning over his words. In the desert, her family had always been alone. Survival had been a constant struggle against the elements, against predators, against chance itself. She realized now that human strength was not only in their tools or technology, but in their cooperation, their ability to support one another. Perhaps her family could learn from this, combining the resilience of their species with the humans' knowledge. The next day brought another lesson. A sudden sandstorm swept across the desert, faster and fiercer than any Lyra had experienced in recent memory. The outpost's shields held, but the wind rattled the structures, and sand seeped through small gaps. Lyra's heart pounded as she guided her children to a safe room, holding them close. Marcus moved efficiently, checking the walls, adjusting the energy shields, and ensuring everyone remained safe. The storm raged for hours, shaking the outpost and testing its defenses. Lyra felt both fear and admiration. She realized how humans could anticipate danger, prepare for it, and protect others. It was a lesson she had never fully understood before. And through it all, her children remained calm, comforted by her presence and the shelter of the outpost. When the storm finally passed, the family stepped outside. The desert had changed slightly, dunes shifted, sand piled against the walls, but the outpost remained intact. Lyra looked at Marcus, gratitude filling her heart. "You saved us," she said quietly. Marcus shook his head. "We saved each other," he replied. "You helped too, using your knowledge. This place works because of teamwork, not just machines." Lyra felt a spark of pride. She had always been cautious, always afraid of relying on anyone else. But she now understood that strength could be shared, that collaboration could protect and nurture life in ways she could not achieve alone. Over the next few days, Lyra began teaching her children what she had learned. Coro experimented with simple machines, building small devices from spare parts. Lena helped tend the gardens, learning about plant growth and care. Fex copied their actions, giggling as he moved containers or arranged tools. Lyra watched, realizing that her children were not only surviving, they were thriving. One evening, as the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the outpost, Marcus invited the family to gather near the small terrace. He had prepared a simple lesson about the stars, pointing out constellations and explaining how humans use them to navigate the desert and beyond. Lyra listened, fascinated, while her children looked up in awe. "Look there," Marcus said, pointing to a bright cluster of stars. "We call that the traveler's path. Long ago, humans used it to find new lands and new worlds." Coro's eyes widened. "Could we go there someday?" he asked. Marcus smiled. "Perhaps. One day, if you learn, explore, and grow strong, the stars will be open to you." Lyra felt a wave of emotion. The desert had always been their world, but now, she realized, the universe was vast, filled with possibilities her family had never imagined. For the first time, she allowed herself to dream beyond mere survival. That night, as they lay under the shelter's roof, Lyra thought about the lessons of the past days. Her children had learned more than she had hoped. They had begun to understand the value of knowledge, trust, and cooperation. She felt a growing respect for humans, not only for their technology, but for their ability to nurture, protect, and inspire. The following morning, a small crisis tested them again. One of the human children had wandered near a fragile solar panel, and Coro, alert and quick-thinking, warned them just in time. Lyra realized how much her children had learned from observing humans: attention to detail, caution, and foresight. She felt proud and reassured. Marcus praised them not just for their quick action, but for their curiosity and intelligence. "You are learning quickly," he said. "Your species is remarkable. You just need guidance and protection to thrive." Lyra listened, considering his words carefully. She had always known her children were intelligent, resourceful, and capable. But hearing it from a human, a stranger who had once been just a figure on the desert horizon, reinforced her belief in their potential. She realized that humans' greatest gift was not their machines or strength. It was their ability to recognize, nurture, and protect potential in others. As the sun began to set, Lyra led her children to the terrace once more. The desert stretched endlessly, but the outpost glowed with warmth and life. She realized that while the desert was harsh and unforgiving, the lessons learned here, trust, cooperation, and knowledge, could help her family face any challenge. They spent the evening sharing stories. Marcus spoke of humans' travels, discoveries, and dreams. Lyra shared tales of the desert, of the dangers they had faced, and of the strength her children had shown. The children laughed, fascinated by both human and alien tales, learning about bravery, curiosity, and hope. That night, Lyra watched her children sleep peacefully. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction. They had survived the desert, but now, with knowledge, guidance, and trust, they could grow into something greater than mere survivors. They could become explorers, learners, and dreamers. Outside, the wind carried the cool desert air, but inside the shelter, warmth and light enveloped them. Lyra whispered softly, "We have much to learn and much to become. The universe is wider than the desert, and one day we will see it." For the first time in years, she allowed herself to rest fully, knowing her children were safe, curious, and growing. The human outpost had become more than a shelter. It had become a school, a home, and a place of hope. And Lyra understood that sometimes, the strength of humanity was not in weapons or walls, but in kindness, patience, and the belief that life, no matter how fragile, could always grow stronger. And as the twin moons rose high above the desert, casting their silver light over the dunes and the outpost, Lyra felt something she had long thought lost. The quiet certainty that her family's future was no longer just survival. It was something far greater. The weeks passed, and life at the human outpost became more familiar for Lyra and her children. Each day brought new lessons, new discoveries, and new opportunities to grow. Coro had become skilled with the outpost's tools, often helping Marcus maintain the energy panels and machinery. Lena had a special talent for gardening, learning to nurture plants in ways even Marcus admired. Fex, though still small, had begun to understand the routines of the outpost, helping where he could and delighting everyone with his curiosity and laughter. Lyra herself had grown more confident. She had learned to use the human tools, to understand their systems, and even to assist in minor repairs around the shelter. Each time she accomplished something new, a sense of pride filled her. The desert had made her resilient, but the humans had taught her patience, teamwork, and the power of knowledge. She realized that her family could now thrive in ways they never could have on their own. One morning, Marcus approached Lyra with a plan. "There's a small expedition we're preparing," he said. "We explore areas beyond the immediate desert, gather resources, and test new systems. I think your family should come with me." Lyra hesitated. The desert was vast and dangerous, and travel had always been risky. But she also saw the opportunity this journey offered. Her children had grown strong, curious, and capable, and now, under the guidance of humans, they could explore safely and learn more about the universe. She nodded. "We will come," she said. The expedition was unlike anything Lyra's family had experienced. They traveled in a human vehicle designed to glide over the dunes, protected from the harsh winds and scorching sun. Coro studied the machinery eagerly, asking Marcus questions and learning how each part worked. Lena admired the landscape, fascinated by the way plants and small creatures had adapted to survive. Fex, giggling, pointed out every new animal they passed, his laughter echoing in the vehicle. During the journey, Lyra noticed something remarkable. The humans moved with a sense of purpose and coordination she had never seen outside the outpost. They communicated silently, anticipated problems, and protected one another instinctively. Lyra realized that this was a form of strength entirely different from the survival skills of the desert. Here, knowledge, teamwork, and foresight created a safety net that allowed her family to explore, learn, and grow. When they reached a small oasis, Marcus allowed the family to step out. The water shimmered under the sunlight, surrounded by hardy plants and small creatures adapted to the desert. Coro immediately examined the water filtration system Marcus had installed, asking questions and making small adjustments. Lena knelt by the plants, studying the leaves and roots, while Fex splashed in the water, squealing with delight. Lyra stood nearby, watching them, feeling a sense of pride that was almost overwhelming. As the sun began to set, Marcus gathered everyone together. "This is just the beginning," he said. "There are many more places to explore, many more things to learn. The universe is larger than any of us can imagine, and with knowledge, cooperation, and courage, your family can thrive anywhere." Lyra thought of the desert, of the harsh winds and endless dunes that had once been their only home. She realized that while the desert had shaped them, the humans had given them the tools to grow beyond it. She looked at her children, each one glowing with excitement, curiosity, and confidence. She knew that their future was no longer limited by the harshness of the desert or the fragility of their species. The family returned to the outpost, their minds filled with new ideas and questions. That night, as they sat together under the roof, they shared stories of their day. Coro described the mechanics he had studied, Lena spoke of the plants she had observed, and Fex laughed about the small creatures he had chased near the oasis. Lyra listened, feeling a sense of wonder and hope that had been absent from her life for many cycles. Over the following weeks, Lyra continued to integrate with the human community. She participated in daily tasks, helped teach her children, and even shared her own knowledge of the desert. Marcus often marveled at her insights, realizing that her experiences gave the humans a perspective they had never considered. Lyra felt a deep sense of belonging she had never known before. The outpost was no longer just a place of shelter. It was a home, a center of learning, and a community where her family could grow. One day, Lyra decided to take her children to a higher vantage point outside the outpost. From there, they could see the desert stretching endlessly, dotted with distant dunes and small settlements. Coro pointed excitedly, imagining routes and systems for future travel. Lena observed the plant life, noting how it could be harvested and cared for. Fex, laughing, chased small desert creatures, marveling at their speed and cleverness. Lyra felt a profound sense of gratitude. The desert had been their teacher, harsh and unforgiving, but the humans had shown them the possibility of growth, learning, and hope. Her children were thriving, their intelligence and curiosity nurtured in ways she had never imagined. And she realized that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, full of opportunities, and now her family was prepared to explore it. As the twin moons rose, casting a soft silver light across the dunes and outpost, Lyra reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a fragile family in a tent to confident learners in a human shelter, they had come a long way. She thought of the kindness of one human, Marcus, who had offered them a roof when they had nothing. That simple act had changed the course of their lives, opening the door to knowledge, growth, and hope. The next day, Marcus introduced the family to a group of humans planning an interplanetary expedition. "We are preparing to travel to nearby planets," he explained. "Your family has shown courage, intelligence, and adaptability. You are welcome to join us." Lyra looked at her children, their eyes wide with excitement. She knew this opportunity was extraordinary. They had survived the desert, learned from humans, and grown stronger than she had ever imagined. Now they had the chance to explore beyond their world, to learn about the stars, and to experience new challenges together. She nodded. "We will join you," she said. The preparations began immediately. Lyra and her children learned to operate new technology, navigate through maps of the stars, and understand the systems needed to survive on other planets. Marcus guided them patiently, always encouraging, always teaching. The children absorbed every lesson with enthusiasm, demonstrating remarkable intelligence and adaptability. Finally, the day of departure arrived. The family stood together, looking at the spacecraft that would carry them to new worlds. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of excitement and pride. She thought of the desert, of the struggles and dangers they had faced, and of the journey that had brought them to this moment. Her children were ready, confident, and eager to explore. As the spacecraft lifted off, leaving the desert and the outpost behind, Lyra felt a sense of awe. The stars stretched out before them, vast and full of possibilities. She looked at her children, each one glowing with excitement, and realized that their future was no longer limited by fear or survival. They were explorers, learners, and dreamers ready to embrace the universe. Marcus sat beside her, smiling. "You have come far," he said. "Your family has shown courage, intelligence, and heart. The universe is open to you." Lyra nodded, feeling gratitude and hope. She had once feared the desert, the harshness of life, and the fragility of her family. Now she saw that with kindness, knowledge, and trust, they could thrive anywhere. The journey ahead was vast, full of challenges and wonders, but she knew they were ready. The spacecraft glided through the stars, leaving the familiar desert behind. Lyra watched her children, their faces filled with wonder and excitement. She thought of the lessons they had learned: resilience, curiosity, teamwork, and hope. She knew that these lessons would carry them far, helping them grow stronger and achieve more than she had ever imagined. As they traveled to new worlds, Lyra felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The desert had shaped them, but the humans had shown them the power of knowledge, trust, and community. Her children were no longer just survivors. They were explorers, ready to embrace the universe and all the possibilities it offered. And under the glow of distant stars, as the spacecraft soared through the endless sky, Lyra whispered to herself and her children, "This is only the beginning. Our journey has just begun, and the universe is ours to discover." For the first time in her life, Lyra felt truly hopeful. Her children were safe, strong, and curious. They had learned the value of kindness, knowledge, and trust, and together they would face the universe, ready to explore, to learn, and to thrive. The stars were no longer distant. They were within reach, and the future was bright.